that's kind of the whole reason why I started the Dabbler's Den, was so that, you know, more people would just get out there and do something. If you go back and watch the first couple of episodes, that's literally my tagline on the end of the episode. Just get out there and go, just do something. It doesn't matter what it is. Just get started. Evolutionarily, things don't split unless it's really bad. You know, like their genetic lines completely go in different directions because they had to, you know, and that's what we see happening 786,000 years ago during the mid-Pleistocene. It kind of goes to catastrophism versus uniformitarianism, which has been a thing for 300 years, 400 years, and really, I don't think mainstream science wants to allow catastrophism. Unless they're absolutely forced to, like with the dinosaur extinction.
Stream with Josh soon. Josh the Ancient, straight from the Cosmic Summit where we all met in person. But we are sitting here with Chris Cottrell, researcher, podcast guest, and speaker at the Cosmic Summit, content creator at Dabbler's Den, and now published scientist and author.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Multiverse, Chris.
Yeah, good to be back, guys. Good to be back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Last time you were on the show, we did a Cosmic Monday, so we were just kind of hyping up the show, but really we wanted to bring you back to kind of just hear the full story. But I didn't realize so much was. Let's just start now, because I did with the big news. Mike, did you know he was publishing a book?
I happened to be checking Twitter this past weekend, which I normally don't always get on Twitter, but I was on Twitter while I was at work on Saturday, and I saw right then and there, Chris Cottrell is publishing a new book. This is awesome. Yeah. I texted Dave and Brittany immediately, and they were like, "Yep, sure enough, he's on the schedule next week." So this is great.
Yeah. I wanted to have it published. I think I wanted to try to get it published today, to make sure that it was going out at least by our meeting today. But I was like, it's ready. I was ready like last week. I had to push the go button.
Well, it works out good because you're going to be our December book of the month.
Cool. Thank you.
This episode's scheduled to release like that first Friday of the month anyway, so it's going to be perfect. So you'll be our December book of the month.
Oh, that's cool.
So congratulations, man. Were you keeping it a secret, or was it like I don't remember hearing about it, but maybe I just didn't ask.
Okay, so last time we talked, we had a whole conversation about publishing a paper.
Yes.
Yeah, because one of the big things, I was sharing the stage this summer at the Cosmic Summit with Antonio Zamora, who's my research partner, but we don't agree on a lot. Well, actually, we agree on a lot, but some of the key, the key ingredients for the Carolina Bays, we have differing opinions. So it was kind of a hard process to write a paper with somebody that you don't agree with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
We wanted to stick to the science. We wanted to stick to the facts, and try to keep our own biases separate and out of the paper. And that we kind of wanted to include or not include the timing at all. Like we were just going to focus on the ellipticity of these Carolina Bays and how many there are that are perfect mathematical ellipses. But we found through the process, it was a really long process. I mean, it took us almost 8 months. Basically, that was my ticket back to the Cosmic Summit to be a speaker, was to bring Antonio on and actually present this stuff together, because I'd already talk my spiel for 2 summers. And this time it was like, we got to bring something more to the table. Let's publish a paper. Let's publish a paper together. And we spent 8 months. It was grueling. It was hard. We would submit it to a paper, to a journal, to go under review, and they would just look at it and be like, yeah, that's not what we're going to do here. And so rejection is a big part of it. I mean, it was like, oh God, man, come on, we gotta find somebody.
When you say grueling, are you talking about like hours, like editing and resubmitting and waiting? But are we also talking about like field stuff too, or?
A little bit of that. We had to go back at the last minute and kind of add some things and things that we didn't really anticipate having to add. Because every time you submitted a paper to somebody, it would come back with some feedback, and we try to incorporate all of that feedback. And it's funny, we both thought we had a really good product to present, and all the feedback that came back, we were like, and every time we would keep adding more and more and more to it. So by the time the final paper actually did get approved and published and, went through peer review and all that, it was kind of a different paper, but a much, much better paper. All of those little steps that we took along the way helped to make it a much more complete paper. We just had to be really careful with how we wrote it, because like I said, we don't agree with about the timing for sure. So we had to really spend some time in a discussions section of the paper to go through those reasons and the steps and the reasons why we disagree, without it sounding like we're disagreeing. You know what I mean? Like these are the 2 options. Let's weigh them out, kind of a thing. And that actually helped me too, because our presentation at the Cosmic Summit was really, going, talking about the ellipticity, and my portion was to talk about both sides. And I've been a part of both sides. I've been an advocate for the Younger Dryas as being, the creation of these Carolina Bays. And then I came across evidence that made me change my mind, and I had to redirect. I had to go another direction because the evidence was so strong that I couldn't support the Younger Dryas impact anymore for the cause of the formation of the Carolina Bays. And so I know both sides, and so being able to present that helped. But back to the book. So that was kind of a really big thing. We finally did get that paper published, literally like the month of the Cosmic Summit, to it. Not sure if I have something solid, and literally like a week or 2 before the Cosmic Summit, into the June edition of the Geology and Earth Systems or Science of that journalists. I don't know why I tell us it's like so important. But anyway, so that went out.
That's cool though. There's something to be said, right, Chris, about like you guys fundamentally disagreeing on like a portion of the research, because it really it forced you guys to like dial it in and find a narrow lane so that it could get accepted, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like these are the things that we agree about. That we're not, we can focus on that. And we had to, towards the end, include the things that we don't disagree about. And I think that was good too. I think that needed to happen in that paper. That was one of the things that people kept bringing up. It's like, well, when did you think these happened? And it's such an important part of the story, because when they get brought up as part of the Younger Dryas, it turns a lot of people off or it turns a lot of people on. And, we've got to just lay out all the facts. And still to this day, Antonio thinks that this is a Younger Dryas event, and I've had to change my mind. So that was what we brought to the Cosmic Summit this year. I think we did a good job getting that reported, and that's out there now. But one of the things I noticed while I was there was how many people were selling their books, right? You got Scott Walter there selling his books, and even Billy Carson showed up, just basically to sell his books. And I was like, I should have something. I should have something to put out there. And so after the Cosmic Summit, I was like, well, that was done, and to be quite honest, like the paper writing process, burned me out, man. That was tough. That was really tough. And I mean, I may never go back and write another paper again. I'm not going to say never, but it's not something I'm ready to jump back into because it was just grueling. Like I said, I was glad it was done. I was glad it was published, but it was hard. Writing the book, way easier. It was so much easier. I had because I had all of this information anyways, and some of the stuff was in things that some of the stuff that's in the book you really don't want to put into a peer reviewed paper because it's, it is speculation, or it is, it's my own biases and things like that are included, which would be hard, but it could be the basis of a paper later on, but I just wanted to get the stuff down. I had all these thoughts, I had all these ideas, and we just need to print and have actually something that's fit to get some back, because it's not cheap. Even just the publishing of the paper isn't cheap. It was very expensive, and we didn't have grants or funds or anything like that to go in, so it came out of our own pockets to actually have this paper funded. All the peer reviewers have to be paid, the editors have to be paid, and so It's not a cheap process. And that's one of the I guess the blocks for a lot of people getting their ideas out there. What's the word I'm looking for? It's you're just not able to express yourself because you can't, it's too expensive or whatever. So it was very difficult. So
yeah, you can't. I mean, you're locked into your circumstances, right? I mean, you can't. And there's probably a lot of people in that circumstance, people with good ideas who don't have the time or money or the institutional backing to kind of,
and it's kind of done like that on purpose, a lot of these papers, they have to write, they have to get like really extensive grants, and then, a lot of that money goes towards the publication fees, and it shouldn't be that way. It's pretty tough, but it has to be taken seriously too. And like I said, the other people have to get paid. And so anyways, it's just really expensive. So I'm kind of glad that I have something now that I can at least say, well, I do have this and it's for sale, and maybe we can recoup it, maybe like a couple dollars a piece. But yeah. So.
Well, that's awesome. And we certainly look forward to holding a copy of this book and digging into it. And
I am too. Some people have been getting copies of it, and I'm like, I don't even have a copy of my book yet.
So maybe they live closer to the printing center or the distribution center.
Or the Amazon Prime delivery person. Yeah. I live kind of out in the sticks. I think I get in the last of the line.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted to take it all the way back as far as you're willing to go back. And if you could tell us a little bit about what inspired you to become a scientist. You're a scientist and an educator. What set you down the path that you are on today?
Yeah, I think I've always, I know that I've always enjoyed science, even as a kid, growing up in the 80s and 90s, and we were always outside, we were always playing, we were smashing rocks and seeing what was inside of them. And the other thing was my dad was military, so we moved a lot. And, we would move from Connecticut, where I was born, to Hawaii, then to Washington State, and then back to Connecticut, and then from Connecticut down to Georgia. And most of the times when we moved, we would pack up and literally in the bed of a pickup truck with nothing but a metal tin, camper top, we would haul ourselves across the country, with the four of us, my mom, my dad, and myself and my sister. And my dad literally bolted a couple boat seats in the back of the truck, and off we went. And we stopped at all the places. We stopped at the Grand Canyon, and we stopped at Yosemite and Yellowstone and things like that. I think I was the last time we moved. That was probably 5 or 6 years old when we were doing those kind of things. And those they really stick. That was a time where those memories really kind of stuck with me, and just the intrigue stuck with me for a long time. So yeah, I was just always interested in sciences and mostly biology and ecology. Actually, when I was growing up, I was really interested in the ecology of things. And through the process of, going through high school and things like that, we spent a lot of time on the water, fishing and surfing and things like that. And so I was actually going to go to school to be a marine biologist. And trying to find a program here in South Georgia that had marine biology was pretty difficult. So the process was I would have to go get an undergrad in biology, and then hopefully be able to advance later on into a marine biology program or something like that at another school farther away, like UGA or something like that. And so anyway, I went to a smaller school, Georgia Southern University, and my freshman year was abysmal. It was terrible. I did so bad. And it wasn't really, we did the partying and things like that, and we spent a lot of time traveling to Savannah and back home and things like that.
It sounds like you did it right, though, Chris.
Exactly.
First year, freshman year, it's okay.
I don't regret anything. I'll tell you that. I've made lots of mistakes, but I don't regret any of them. But my GPA at the end of that freshman year suffered. I was literally
makeup.
Yeah, I mean, they literally they expelled me. They put me on expulsion. They were like, we gave you a chance because they put me on their list for probation and things like that. And I was like, yeah, I got this. We'll be good. We're fine. And they're like, yeah, no, you're not fine. in fact, we don't want you to come back ever. so that was ever. Yeah. Like to this day, I think if I went back to Georgia Southern, they'd be like, yeah, we can't count those credits.
There's a picture of you up on the wall there, like Van Wilder or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, during that time, I did meet my now wife, and that worked out that well. And it kind of came down to whether or not I was going to just forget about school and join the military or something like that, which wouldn't have been a bad choice for me actually at the time, because I needed something to hold me accountable, because I wasn't doing it for myself. And so
that's why I did it.
Yeah, well, and my friends that did it were successful, and they needed it too. But anyways, my wife was going to school, and it was kind of like one of those things where, well, I could either straighten up and start, getting that GPA back up, or that was it. It was going to be over, and time to tighten up the bootstraps and hit boot camp. And so one of the classes that I did actually pass my freshman year, one of them, besides
Geology.
tennis. Yeah. Well, that's what it was. Yeah, it was an intro level geology class that I took, and the guy's name was Dr. Vance. I won't forget his name. But I was like, I really thought it was a cool class. I really got into it. I still think I passed with a C.
Right.
But it was passing. I got credit for it. and which also meant that one transfers. So that was good. But yeah, I needed to get my GPA up. I went to a local school here. I went to a Georgia Coastal Community College, and started taking classes there. Plus I also lost any grants or anything like that I had. Scholarships I had were gone. I really screwed that up bad. But so I was working 2 jobs. I was working full, going to school full time, trying to get my GPA back up. I knew that I had to get it up to a certain point to get enrolled at another, smaller coastal, another smaller Georgia college called Valdosta State University, which is in the very southern part of central part of Georgia. And there was a certain cutoff that I needed to have my GPA at, and I was able to get it. And then I just started taking every single geology class I can get my hands on, because I really did enjoy them. I changed my major from marine biology into science education, which is a broad field degree. So you have to take lots of different science classes. So I had to take the chemistries, I had to take the physics, I had to take, all the classes that you would normally have to take. My emphasis was in earth and space science. So I had to take all of those geology classes too. But every chance I got, I would always take an extra 1 or 2 classes a semester in that field. And by the time I graduated, not only did I have the bachelor's in secondary science education with a broad field and an emphasis in earth and space science. But I had two minors. I had a minor in geology and a minor in environmental geography, which was like landforms and catastrophes and things like that, which is like right up my alley now, but I was taking all those classes and passing them all. I was making A's on all those because I needed to boost that GPA. So it was it was kind of like a double-edged sword. Like it was a ton of work, but it was stuff that I was really enjoying. So it really worked out for me. After that, I got a job working at a small school here in like rural Georgia. I spent 4 years there. I got a position open up at the high school that I'm working at now, and I applied for it. I also got a master's degree in education while I was working at that small rural school. So I went ahead and got a master's degree from Troy University with a cohort of other teachers that were getting degrees at the same time there, which was in education, like the only way that you kind of get a raise is if you up your education level, which it should be merit based, but it's not. So you have to get more degrees. So I did that to get a pay increase, which I needed. And then that was in 2007. I got a new job working at the place that I'm at now. And then in I guess it was 2013, there was a program where I could get a master's degree in a certain science field. And because I work at a Title I school, as long as I continue to work 5 years at that school, it would be forgiven. The loan would be forgiven. That was during the Obama era. And that's I got a second master's degree from Mississippi State University in geoscience, and basically, basically,
you had to pay for some stuff, but yeah, you got your loan forgiven.
Right, and because I work at a Title I school which is like I think it's over half of the student population is on like free and reduced lunch, and it's a poor school. Or at least a poor school system. And, as long as I continue to work there for 5 years, then it would be forgiven. And I was like, okay, I'm not going anywhere.
I'm already here.
Yeah. So then I ended up with a second master's degree in geoscience, and that was in 2015. That was around the same time that Randall Carlson first showed up on Joe Rogan. And started to really kind of change the world with his talks, and because it was really the first time. People have to remember, even at like the Cosmic Summit crowd, that I am a mainstream scientist. I am a mainstream science educator, and that's what I'm paid to do, is to teach science, right? And so I have to be exactly. So I have to be very careful when I'm in like these big groups where there's all kinds of stuff going on. But the thing I really liked about Randall Carlson was that the things that he was talking about, he backed them with the science. And I was like, you know what? Some of this stuff is actually on point. And I would look into it, and I was like, he's making a lot of sense. And because we were actually learning about things like isostatic rebound, and it was always like a side thing, like the ice sheets are heavy, and then it rebounds. But it was Randall Carlson. I was like, yeah, well, when that's rebounding, that means that someplace else is sinking, and then that brought on the whole Atlantis talk about the Azores sinking into the Atlantic. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense, and that was the first time where I had to like rethink some of those topics. It was actually one of my flat Earth friends. I'm not a flat Earth person, but my
I've got a couple. We've all got a couple.
Shout out to all the flat Earthers who are watching the show.
We love you guys.
I literally introduced him as my flat Earth friend, Jamie. But he was the one who sent me the Randall Carlson, the Joe Rogan Randall Carlson episode.
Wait, was
and
this
I
the guy
remember,
that mistook me for Danny
no,
Jones?
that wasn't
No,
it. We'll
different guy. Okay.
That's Travis. Travis is he's awesome. I love Travis.
I love Travis too. I'm super excited to meet him. I hope he comes to next year's Cosmic Summit. So if he's watching Travis, come back to next year's Cosmic Summit.
I'm sure he'll be there. They gave up going to Bonnaroo the first year. Him and his wife Contessa would go to Bonnaroo every year. Wow. And when George put together the Cosmic Summit, they were like, let's do that instead of Bonnaroo this year.
I love it.
They've been back ever since.
I love it.
Yeah, me too.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's fine.
We were
mainstream educator Randall Carlson onto the scene.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was the first time where I was like, there might be something to some of this stuff. Let me listen, harder at what these fringe people are trying to say, and a lot of it does make sense. Some of it I still come across things and I'm like, man, I don't know about that, guys. But that's fine. It's part of it, right?
It's part of the fun.
That's exactly right. That's exactly. Can you imagine like going through your day like Flint Dibble every single day, having to defend?
Just write about everything.
Yeah, that's.
Everything, and that's it.
It reminds me of something that Laird Scranton told us. You have to at least sincerely entertain another viewpoint for as long as you can until the evidence piles up. But you have to start by sincerely entertaining that.
Yeah. I also like George Howard has he has something that he said before that kind of stuck with me, is that every really serious researcher has to have some kooky idea, like something out there that they're into. I mean, maybe it's like Bigfoot, or maybe it's, but there's something that they're like really, really into, just to get them away from that seriousness of peer review and papers and things like that. Yeah.
Maybe that's why there's so much crossover in the cryptid and ancient history area. That's possibly it.
Yeah.
You know what, Chris? What I hear is this story of sort of academic perseverance. A lot of people could have after that first year been like, I'm going to join the army, or I'm going to go get a sales job somewhere or whatever. You were like, you know what? I'm turning this ship around. And then you got 4 degrees or something after that. And I just want to say that resonates with me a little bit, in that I've tried. It took me 3 tries before I finally went back to school and got my degree, and then got my master's degree. So I just want to recognize that I really appreciate people who really set their mind to something and go, I'm going to learn this stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to know what was really driving you during that time to really turn it around. I mean, you were a young man. You had, the world was your oyster. Why were you like, no, I'm doing this?
It's hard to say, really. It's hard to say, but it could have been a failure, because it was a big failure. I can remember just sitting there being like, oh man, it was almost like a rock. Yeah, it was like a rock bottom moment, even though, some people have a way worse experience for rock bottom, instead of sitting there like, I got to go get a job. But yeah. And then it was the struggle. And then it was like you could see the top of the hill. I got to get to this next class. If I get through this next class, yeah. Now it was a constant uphill battle. Like I was digging myself out of this hole. It seems like for forever, And really, it kind of is. I don't think you ever get out of the hole. You always got that in the back of your mind. But again, I don't regret any of it. It's made me who I am today, and I'm not going to change it. So, I would do it all again.
Right. Well, I love hearing stories like that. So thank you for sharing with us. And so we've talked about this before on the show. So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but would you explain to the audience who didn't see that one, how did you meet George Howard, and how did you guys get together about the Carolina Bays idea and that kind of thing? And how did that whole thing come together? And where did you first learn about the Carolina Bays? And what is a Carolina Bay?
Right. Yeah. So yeah. Well, so I first learned about Carolina Bays when I was working on all of those geology classes at Valdosta State University. There's a place there called Grand Bay, And we would go out to Grand Bay. It was one of those places where it's a WMA, a wildlife management area. It's open for hunting this time of year, and then it's closed off for hunting for the rest of the year. But people can go out there. There's a boardwalk that you can walk down. It's a beautiful area. It's all like a freshwater wetlands ecology. And there's pitcher plants and things like that all the way out there. It's a beautiful nature walk. But when you get to the end of the boardwalk, there's like a 100-foot tower. You can walk up to the top of the tower and just see this expansive swamp. You can pick out the alligators from the top of this thing. It's really kind of impressive. Now, it was popular with the college kids because you could get out there on the top of this tower and pretty much do whatever you wanted because you have fair warning about anybody coming down the path, and nobody's going to bother you. So there was certain groups of my friends that enjoyed going out to Grand Bay just to kind of relax and hang out, And but anyways, we went there on a field trip one time also. So I'd already been there. I already kind of was fascinated with the ecology. But on this field trip with the geology class, I asked the professor, I was like, well, what is this place? Because, you could really tell where your vantage point is that it's a really big circle all the way around you. And I asked him, what's causing that? Like, why is it such a big circle? And we were actually pretty close to sinkholes in Florida. And I was like, is this a sinkhole? Is it just farther north than most of the sinkholes are? And that's what created this circular depression. And he was like, no. He said, actually, it's not a circle. He explained to me that it was an ellipse, and that there were a ton of them. They're all up and down the East Coast. In fact, like all through Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, all the way up to New York. And I was like, really? And so I was fascinated by that. He did mention that that there is a hypothesis that they could be formed by secondary impacts from a primary impact into a glacier. And this was back in the year 2000, 1999, 2000. And he brought that up, and I was like, really? Oh, that makes sense, But he said it wasn't well supported, and that the most dominant hypothesis is that these were created by wind and water. And at the time, I was like, yeah, okay, I could see that, until I actually went and looked at them. Like I went online back then. It was, Ask Jeeves or something like that. And it actually popped up George Howard's website. So if you're not, I think you talked with him about this, right?
Yeah, the cosmic tusk. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even before that, he was working for the Senate, and
yes.
Yeah. And the senator asked him to get some topographic maps of his property in North Carolina, and George is the one who noticed the elliptical depressions everywhere, and the old senator, who was ancient then, back in the 90s, it may have been late 80s, but he said, yeah, those are meteor holes, and he told them the whole story about back in the 1930s that they thought that there was meteor swarm came in and they all blew up in North Carolina, creating these big depressions, and he was fascinated with it, and he started researching into these things, and all of his work ended up going on to his .com website, georgehoward.com, and just to have some place to put it. And that's where I came across it back in the year 2000. And really since then, I didn't think too much about him. It was kind of in the back of my mind that this thing could have been like a big catastrophic event, or it could be wind and water. We really don't know. It's a mystery. And that was what was intriguing to me, was that, we still have mysteries, because I can remember thinking,
of course,
I can remember thinking back in my college days, like, we got this figured out. These professors, they got it figured out. They write papers and things like that. And I can remember feeling depressed, man, there's not a lot of exploration. There's not a lot of, discovery left to be made. And I was kind of depressed about that. So
that's the myth, man. That's the paradigm myth, Chris. That is not true. It's not true about the ocean or space or archaeology or geology.
And Randall Carlson helped me see that. He helped me understand that. Back in that, this is 15 years after that. In 2015 is when I had that epiphany that there's more to these stories, and that's when I was like, you know what? We'd actually we had to go to a funeral in Valdosta, and so my daughter was little; she was like still in diapers, and it's actually one of the very first videos that I put on my YouTube channel. Was us going to Grand Bay. It's still out. It's still on my YouTube channel. You can go watch it right now. But there is we go to Grand Bay. We walk the boardwalk. My 2-year-old daughter climbs every step all the way up to the top of this tower. And I'm kind of narrating it and talking about this mystery that I heard about back when I was in college, and that kicked it off. Like that's when I went back and started looking back into it. I eventually started to I found Antonio Zamora. I found Michael Davis's work, and so I was just kind of like a fanboy, just going through all their stuff, trying to figure out what they had discovered. I started making my own videos on YouTube, and going back and watching them, just like you guys do. You go back and watch your early videos, and you're like, oh, what was I thinking?
Oh yeah. I just pretend they don't exist.
Yeah. But that's what started. That's what started off, was actually going back and trying to make sense of these things. And I got a lot wrong. I go back and I watch that video of me trying to explain on this walk with my daughter. And I'm like, there was a lot of things that I got wrong. I just didn't know. And since then, I started to really research into them, finding a lot more information, reading all the papers that are out there about them. And that's kind of what led me to where we are now, like actually writing my own papers and writing a book about them and kind of putting out my own perspective of them. So that's where we are now.
It's exciting, man. And
yeah, it is.
So I know that your separation with Zamora is on the time and the time frame and how the depressions were made. Is it or no? Not how?
No. I agree with them on how they're made. I agree with them. So there are two camps like that. Like there are two Carolina Bay. Well, there's three if you include the mainstream geologists. But
there's wind people, right?
Yeah, the wind people.
Wind people. Then there's water
precision
and
of the wind lakes versus.
There's permafrost lake people or something too.
Something like that. Yeah, it really, like when you look into it, it makes zero sense. It makes no sense. And I included those things in the book. It's in the book. It's in the book. You got to.
Yes, it's on the way, my man. It's on the way.
But no, I mean it is. It is. When you really look at it, you're like, why is this the most dominant? The mainstream hypothesis. It makes no sense. I can understand like a soil scientist who is digging through dirt, and they may come across that because of course wind and water reshaped or affected these things over time. But as far as how they formed, that can't happen.
The landscape, like all in the same direction, like facing the same direction, like with the same depth, similar depth.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, and that's
I'm not even a geologist, man.
Yeah.
I'm nothing.
Yeah, and it's just it doesn't happen, especially with environmental variables. It can't happen that way every single time, because if it forms two identical shapes, then is that luck or coincidence? But there's 70,000 of these things at least, and they all, like you said, they all have orientation back, like literally to the Great Lakes. When you go look at the Great Lakes geology, like the rock stratigraphy of the area, it's a perfect ring-shaped basin. There's just so many things that line up that just scream that there's more to the story. And I've been trying to get all these geologists and people to listen, but that's one reason why I wrote the book. I was putting videos out. You guys, I'm super glad that you guys found this information and we're talking about it now on the podcast. But you weren't my primary audience. My primary audience was the geologists. It was the the geomorphologists. It was the people that actually are doing this research and just trying to point out the discrepancies and the problems in their methods, and it falls on deaf ears, and there really needs to be more work being done on them, and there's none being done on them right now.
Is there some kind of gatekeeping going on, academic gatekeeping, or I don't want you to speak as much as you'd like, but is there something like that going on?
Well, I don't know. I kind of feel like it kind of goes to catastrophism versus uniformitarianism, which has been a thing for 300 years, 400 years, and really, I don't think mainstream science wants to allow catastrophism unless they're absolutely forced to, like with the dinosaur extinction. But that took decades for enough geologists to say, yeah, this was an impact. This was an impact that took out the dinosaurs. When I was little, we didn't know it was climate change, or it was volcanoes erupting, and even if you watch like the Landheim, like that came out in the early '80s, like it's there's nothing about comets in there. It's all about volcanoes erupting and then Pangea breaking apart and things like that, right? So it wasn't until the early '90s where the Alvarez team, that had been going around and collecting samples from this black rock layer all around the planet, where they were finding high levels of iridium. It wasn't until they actually found the crater in the Yucatan Peninsula, basically where the cenotes are. Weren't you guys just talking about cenotes with somebody? Anyways,
possibly. I think I was. I forget.
Yeah, on one of the podcasts. But anyways, it was those cenotes in the Yucatan where the Maya were building their empire that formed this like really unique arc shape, and it was the rim of a massive crater created 65 million years ago, 66 million years ago. And then everybody was like, okay, you got us. There was an impact. It was big. It took out the dinosaurs.
Yeah. But why do you think it's so hard to move the needle on that idea? I know it comes down to the dichotomy of catastrophism versus uniformitarianism, but is it really that simple? It seems crazy to me. Like, it seems, why can't it be both? Like, why can't it go slow and fast at the same time?
Yeah. Punctuated uniformitarianism. I think that's and I think you guys have said that in the past too. That's where it should be. I think that most of us generalists that we have come to that conclusion, especially us that are in these spheres, like we're like, yeah, of course this is happening. Why? Yeah. Right. So and the problem is it's the videos and stuff weren't getting attention, and that's why I was like, well, then I'm gonna have to put this into a format that they may understand better. So let's write a paper, and then put it into a scientific paper and have it peer reviewed and have it published. And maybe then someone will read it and pay attention to it. So far it's been crickets, but we'll see.
So you haven't gotten any formal like academic review since it's been published, or have you?
Well, I mean, it went through the peer review of the geologists that were on their staff. But yeah, I haven't had any kind of, there's been, like, I can go on to ResearchGate and see like the people who've read it, and there's like maybe eight, like, I think it's had about 300 reads. If you go to ResearchGate, it's been about 300 reads. And I think only about maybe a dozen are actual researchers in that field. Because if somebody on ResearchGate reads a paper from ResearchGate, it kind of tags them in that, saying that, hey, this researcher read your paper. I don't know if that's good or bad.
I'm going to say it's good, because think about how many, like 12 people is probably a lot who understand like the technicalities that are going on in the paper, right? I mean, that's probably pretty decent, because you're probably
but you also don't know a few
hundred people, right? Like they would understand it.
We try to break it down. We try to make it as user friendly as possible. At least I do. Like I said, as an educator, I want to take these complex ideas and break them down. That's why I had somebody reach out to me earlier that they bought the book, and they're like, hey, look what I got, and I was like, they just say, I hope I understand it. I'm like, I hope so too. I wrote it for a general audience. I hope you do understand it. So we'll see.
I just imagine the book just being more technical than the paper than the book.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Plus the paper, you had to avoid like your real opinions, which is interesting. What was that like at a Cosmic Summit? Like when you because I remember you telling me that you actually didn't agree with Antonio, but like, were people talking to you about that at the,
so I don't want to get too deep into it. But we'll say that it was really after the Cosmic Summit that I started getting phone calls from people that were there at the Cosmic Summit presenting in that field. And I've come to realize that my biggest critics are actually in the Comet Research Group.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes, they would prefer me to shut up and not talk about these Carolina Bays because they've been a thorn in their side for so long. They just want it not to be brought up at all. And in fact, they didn't even read the paper. They didn't even read my take on it, right? They just assumed because I was sharing the stage with Antonio Zamora that I agree with everything that Antonio Zamora says. And Antonio's been at it for longer than I have. He's made more friends in the field than I have. And it was one of these people that said, why were you like, why did he give me a copy of his book? What do you agree with that? And I was like, no, dude, what are you talking about? That's the whole point of the presentation was to talk about the differences that we have. Yeah. And he wasn't listening at all. He was really upset. This actually led to a email chain that included Graham Hancock and George Howard and a whole bunch of people. And I was like, dude, and he kind of made himself, he had to come back later on and apologize because he was really out of line. And this is a well-respected person in that field, Yeah.
It's insightful because obviously the Atlantis stage was the juicy debate where shots were being fired in multiple directions. And we knew that obviously you and Antonio are like on good terms. You did a great presentation together and you differed on the origin age of those impacts. So I didn't know that there was such drama after the fact.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not going to say names, but it's probably not hard to figure it out when you go, because it was actually someone who spoke. So I'm dropping a lot of clues for you, but
what I don't get though is that it doesn't disprove Younger Dryas impact hypothesis if you're just pushing the age of those specific
that's the point,
because it's a really old planet, like you know what I mean. This shit happens all the time in a several billion-year-old
and that was the point that I was trying to make anyways, was that both could happen, right? And just because one, what do I want to say? Like by separating the two hypotheses, because like I said, a lot of people like Antonio still lump the Carolina Bays impact with a Younger Dryas impact, right? And I found enough evidence to make me change my mind. I've been trying to present that evidence. It's all in the Paleoatlantic shorelines and the sea levels that have risen in the past, where there's no Carolina Bays below those shorelines. Which are there, like those shorelines are there. They're dated. We know when they happened, and the fact that you have no Carolina Bays below the shorelines, you have Carolina Bays that were literally like washed in half because of the beaches that were formed at that shoreline. Yeah, like 125,000 years or 400,000 years ago, and that they had to be old. They have to be older than 12,000 years. That's. I don't know how else to say it. In one of Antonio's like smoking gun evidences is the inverted stratigraphy. It's one of the things we presented about was the inverted stratigraphy that they find in a couple of the Carolina Bays that have been studied for OSL dates. And that's his smoking gun. He thinks that the only way that you can have inverted stratigraphy is if there was an impact and the sediment got flopped over. And like I said, I don't want to get too much into it, but that was part of that presentation that we gave together. And my follow-up was that's not the only way that can happen. You can have wind blowing. Like I've been saying this since I changed my mind, that these dates, the OSL dates that they got at Carolina Bays, are more than likely marking erosional events, not formation dates. That the Carolina Bays were already there, and it was major erosional events like the Younger Dryas that caused wind and sand to be blown around. So that's where this whole Aeolian and Lacustrian hypothesis has taken such a strong hold, is because of course they've been altered, they've been changed from wind and water over time, right? Especially if they're like 800,000 years old, which is what the Paleoatlantic shorelines suggest. So
I'm glad you said that, because I've been trying to pronounce those words in my head all day. Aeolian and what was the other one?
Lacustrian. Lacustrian's water. Yeah.
And would you just explain what those two mean in relation for the audience?
Yeah. So Aeolian.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Aeolian is wind. right? It's air, like air and wind, and lacustrine is like lake water. It's ponds, and that's what the mainstream mainstream hypothesis basically suggests, is that every single Carolina Bay was a pond, and it was a pond long enough for wind to reshape the sands around their rims to create perfect ellipses, and then they just all stopped, and it never happened again.
At the same time, they all
at the same with the same shape, with the same orientation. Yes. Yes.
The elliptical conical shape is so perfect that the wind just
So like I said, for a long time, I do support the idea that the Laurentide ice sheet at some time in the past was hit by something from space, and it was the secondary chunks of ice that came launching from that location and came crashing back down, creating the Carolina Bays. Yeah.
I just want to say too that it's very important to have this type of it shouldn't take bravery, but it does, to like go out on a limb. You didn't even realize you were stepping out on a ledge when you wrote the paper, or did you? Did you know you were going to step out on a ledge a little?
Okay. Yes.
But that's the thing. It takes a little bit of because
hold on. You guys didn't go to Cosmic Summit 23, right? Your first year was 2024.
Yeah.
Right. Imagine going in front of that crowd in 2023, knowing that you were about to ruin a bunch of people's day by saying you don't think that it was a younger grass event.
Right.
Like walking into the lion's den and saying, "Yeah, I don't think that was what happened." And here's why. This is the evidence that I have. Take
why
it or
wouldn't
leave
you want
it,
to hear that? Why wouldn't you want to hear the evidence? That's what I'm getting at. Like, it seems very unscientific.
At least it is going older than newer, as opposed to like Egyptologists saying, "Well, it was only 2,000 or 3,000 years ago," and you're saying, "No, it might have been 100,000 years ago."
Yeah.
And also, what does your evidence put it at?
So the shoreline data, and I'm not just talking about like one beach. We're talking about the entire east coast of the United States has shorelines that were created during the Pleistocene, during the interglacials, right? Like right now we're at an interglacial, and we all know about the sea level rise that took place at the end of the Younger Dryas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not during the Younger Dryas, because it was actually already rising, and then the Younger Dryas happened, and we went back into an ice age. So actually, sea levels dropped at the Younger Dryas, but 11,600 years ago they spiked. That's meltwater pulse 1b, and sea levels rose, a couple hundred feet, and they didn't actually stabilize until around 6,000 years ago. And we actually have like Native American shell middens that date back to that time, where sea levels kind of finally settled out. Anyways, so that's our current shoreline, right? Is the Holocene age shoreline of today. And we've been in interglacial now for about 10,000 years, even though sea levels haven't been stabilized until about 6,000 years ago. And it's been like, that's the actual big anomaly, is how stable our own climate has been for like the past 6,000 years. Because when we look
You're not allowed to say that on YouTube, Chris.
No,
You're not allowed to say that on YouTube. Yeah, we're done now, man. Come on.
But that is the anomaly, though, is that it has been really stable. When you look at like the climate data going back in time, it's like, man, it's never been stable. And that's probably why we're here today having this conversation on the internet. Because we've been so stable for so long. We've been able to like really establish ourselves as humans on this planet. And that's kind of what makes the Younger Dryas such a cool story, is it did end, and here we are today with all of these cool gadgets, right? Now, the last time sea levels were as high as they are today was 125,000 years ago. It's the Eemian interglacial.
Wow.
Right, so that was 125,000 years ago, and I can tell you for sure that there are hardly any Carolina Bays underneath that shoreline. There are a few places where we do find them a little bit lower, like we find them in the Delmarva Peninsula a little bit lower, but that's because that area has been slowly sinking. It's been subsiding over the past 125,000 years or whatever.
Okay.
There's also, and that's about 30 feet. So 9 meters, about 30 feet that was the beach 125,000 years ago. So literally sea levels were higher by about 30 feet during the last interglacial. The last time temperatures were like they were today, it was a little bit warmer, and sea levels were a little bit higher by about 30 feet. There are no Carolina bays in that 30 feet band. Now, after that, or I guess before that, going back in time, we went in and out of ice ages. So the Laurentide ice sheet grew and shrank, shrank, number of times. But the last time before 125,000 years ago, that sea levels were higher than that. Does that make sense? Like it was, so they went up and down, but 400,000 years ago, they went up to 42 feet.
Okay.
Right? So we actually have beaches from 125,000 years ago, the last time sea levels were as high as they are today. And then 400,000 years ago was the last time sea levels were higher than that. Right? And then the next time, it's like you have to go back a million years, which is way back. Yeah. So you end up with this like step terraces going down to the current beach, the current Holocene shoreline.
Wow.
Right? So if you look at the shorelines, there are no Carolina bays from our current beach to 30 feet, right? You start finding Carolina bays above 30 feet, but they're really heavily eroded until you get to about 42 feet. So there's like a 12-foot band of elevation where you find highly eroded Carolina bays. Every Carolina bay above 42 feet, beautiful. It's a beautifully shaped, pristine Carolina bay. And you can really see it if you go to like the Myrtle Beach area. If you go to like the Camp Lejeune area, you can find some good Carolina bays there. There's some places in North Carolina right along the beach, but you see this tabletop segments of beaches being formed. And here's the real thing: is if those beaches survived 125,000, like we know that there are beaches there, that there are sand dunes and everything. Like we know that was a beach that was here 125,000 years ago. We know that the beach from 400,000 years ago is still here. It's well dated. If they can survive, so can the Carolina bays, because they are made from the same materials. They're made from the same stuff, right? So we find beaches that are a million years ago, and then I think the next one's like 20 million years ago, like during the Miocene, I think, or whatever. But anyways, so you have these different steps. They're well dated, and there are no Carolina bays below. And so what I'm saying is that sea levels rose and they wiped them away. We find Carolina bays that are half eroded, right? They're truncated right in half. So they had to have been there when that beach was there 125,000 years ago. Right, and if they were formed at the Younger Dryas, we would see them all the way to the beach. We would see them all the way to the Holocene beach, all over the East Coast. Yep. All over the East Coast. And they're gone. There's none there at all, unless you go to the places where the ground is subsiding and it's been slowly sinking.
And that's kind of a smoking gun, is it not?
I think it is, yes. And then I get some people that are like, well, what about tsunamis? What about because we're talking about a lot of time now.
Yes.
Like I can at least go back, like I said, we can at least go back 400,000 years. And the reason why I settled on 786,000 years is because the only other team that has been working on Carolina Bay stuff, that's the date that they had come up with. That's Michael Davies and Tim Harris. They think that this was a mid-Pleistocene transition event because we know that there is a mysterious impact that took place then that created the AA tektites and a whole bunch of other stuff, mass extinctions and all that stuff that happened at that time, and they don't have a crater. There's no crater for it. And so there's another mystery. So they're probably the same mystery. It's probably the same exact thing. And and where we find the AA tektites, which you guys know what tektites are, they're the ground when it's impacted and it completely melts and turns to glass. That's what a tektite. No, never mind. So we find them in like Asia and Australia. That's the whole opposite side of the world from Michigan, where we think this impact took place. But it is the exact opposite side of the world. It's the antipod. Yeah. So literally, if something hit the Earth big enough to create Carolina Bays, then the molten material that was sent up would be launched all the way into suborbit and come back around on the opposite side of the planet. And that's where we find these. Yeah, that's where we find these AA tektites. That's also where we find like the genetic split between our genetic line and like Neanderthals. That's right at the same time. There's all kinds of. There was a 99% genetic extinction that took place at the bottleneck that took place at the time, and then it all goes back to that mid-Pleistocene transition. So that's why I had to change my mind.
A 99% genetic bottleneck, you said?
Yeah.
I've heard of that before. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Not for Homo sapiens, because we weren't a thing yet, but from our common ancestor with the Neanderthals, like whatever caused that split, which I think we I've talked about this before, but things evolutionarily, things don't split unless it's really bad. Like their genetic lines completely go in different directions because they had to, and that's what we see happening 786,000 years ago during the mid-Pleistocene. So there's all these things that line up, and so I've had to change my mind, and now I'm just trying to put that information out there, and I haven't really done a good job of that yet. I haven't really dove headfirst into the mid-Pleistocene, only because there's not as much stuff. The Younger Dryas was really sexy. Everyone was into it. Everyone was excited about the Younger Dryas. We're finding all this cool stuff, proxy evidence, and I got really into it. And so I kind of became, an expert in that. And then to have to come out and be like, I don't think Carolina Bays is a part of that anymore.
Well, I want to hear more about the Pleistocene as you start digging into it. One thing makes me think is Randall kind of identifies as a, quote, catastrophist, right? And sort of the alt community and the academic community, I hate even using those words, but like they kind of are divided, by catastrophism and uniformitarianism too. And so what, in your world, is it difficult to balance the two, or do you just kind of take it in stride? Because some people don't. Some people choose to like have their opinions in secret and stuff like that. Like you could have kept, like you had to choose to put out the information knowing that like you were going to piss some people off,
Yeah. I will say that there are things that I don't share with my students at school. Right. Yeah. Because the last thing I ever need to have is to have somebody come back and be like, look what this guy is teaching our kids, and it's like, oh, that's not true. So there are certain things that I just don't get into. But there are a lot of things that I do get into, like the like our own storyline, because I teach environmental science, and the way that environmental science has always kind of covered the like the whole climate change issue was, we were basically cavemen, bumbling around for hundreds of thousands of years, and then at the end of the ice age, we were like, oh wait, we can grow plants around our huts and raise goats and stuff. We don't have to like hunt food anymore, right? And completely go over the fact that we lost 73% of all of our big mammals at the Younger Dryas boundary. That we lost. We had these mass extinction. Our main food sources were gone, and the people that we were blaming ourselves, the Clovis people, they also, their culture disappeared at the same time too. So it's like, I get into that stuff. I'm like, that is real history. That's really what's happening. So
those poor Clovis people, man, they got a bad rap and they got wiped out by a giant.
I know, right? Yeah. Yep. And really, if you really want to get into it, they were probably hunting bands of these Clovis people using their technology with these spear tips. They were probably living in coastal cities, civilizations on the coast, and these were hunting bands that were going into the interior to look for game. And that's where we find these Clovis points and stuff, right? Because if you think about it, we don't have any evidence of Clovis people. Like the only skeleton we've ever found is like a little toddler found in where do they find her? In Montana? I think they found it in Montana, the infant cache that they found with all the Clovis points.
But yeah, I hadn't heard of that, no.
So I was thinking earlier, obviously we talked about uniformitarianism versus catastrophism. There should also be kind of a not uniform catastrophism, but let's say if not a dinosaur-sized killer, but a medium-sized, like a Younger Dryas size impact happened 10,000 years ago, one might have happened. 100, 200, 1
makes
million.
Too much sense, Mike.
Well, hold on though. Don't get too ahead of yourself, because I think the event that made the Carolina Bays was on par with the Chicxulub, the impact crater. I think it was a dinosaur killer. The only difference is that instead of hitting a shallow sea, it hit a couple miles of ice. And ice is very forgiving. Ice is very absorbent, you know, and a lot of the energy of that impact was actually absorbed into the ice itself, creating the Carolina Bays, creating those AA tektites, you know, and creating the Michigan Basin and all that stuff. But that's why we're here, is because it hit ice instead of a shallow sea. And I think, I mean,
that makes sense.
I think we're going to start finding, if there's enough people to take interest in it, that we're going to find that type of evidence that happened around the mid-Pleistocene, because we have a mid-Pleistocene transition. There was even that was the last pole shift. The last like real geomagnetic pole shift happened at the mid-Pleistocene. It happened at that time. Yeah. And there's other things too that line up with that, suggesting this was a major deal. Like this was a major impact.
Right.
So now the Younger Dryas. Now keep in mind that the Younger Dryas, they, you know, what they're finding now is that this wasn't a single impact. That it was like a really out of control meteor shower, and we were having, you know, bolide blown up in the atmosphere, but lots of them, not just like one or two, but like hundreds of them, and possibly a span of a couple years going through this Tauride meteor stream that was like really dense. So and that's where they're finding this information, or the proxy is from that time. But it wasn't like it was one impact. The Carolina Bays, that has to be one big impact. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So
amazing. One thing I think about when it comes to this is that people don't, like, for general people don't think about this thing stuff on a regular basis. They don't really understand like how the planet changes both very slowly and sometimes very quickly, all at the same time. And so I'm wondering if like you know how like the Clovis thing was like I don't know, paradigm that had to get shattered. The Clovis first. And
when there's still some holdouts too. Yeah.
There's some holdouts, of course, but. Do you think that that's something that sort of a event horizon that we got to break over to like see it as like both at the same time, and it doesn't have to be one camp or the other? Like, can we not see it as both at the same time?
It seems like the dinosaur killer should have done that, right? And I think what's happening now with the Younger Dryas is because that story is so similar. Like it was the Alvarezes that found the black rock layer that had high levels of iridium, and then so they were coming along. All they needed was a crater, and they found it, right? I feel like we're finding the same stuff right now with the Comet Research Group. Even though, like I said, I've had some run-ins with them, I still support them, and the information that they're putting out is actually really good, and they're finding lots of proxy evidence. In this case, it's a really high level of platinum. That they're finding in lots of places. Most recently, there was
Louisiana, right?
No, well, yeah, that too. That too was a pretty good find. That was actually kind of on the back burner for a long time. Somebody had brought that up a long time ago, and it was kind of like, yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it, kind of thing. And they finally went to go get to it, and they're like, oh, wow, there's a lot of good stuff here. And so that's just out. But no, what I'm thinking of is Baffin Bay, which is up in the
Newfoundland.
Yeah. Where they are finding, like, they started doing C-core drills and finding tons of Younger Dryas impact proxy. So that's going to be big. We're just now starting to get into that, and I think that might be like the table flipper that like actually turns the tides and gets the ball rolling again. Because right now we're still just there's just tit and tat, you know, just back and forth, and nothing is really nothing is being achieved because there's just so much back and forth. And it's only just a couple key players, like it always is. You know, there's just a couple really big loudmouths that put out, you know, every retraction that you read is basically the same person complaining to an editor because they're really good at complaining, you know, and they have enough credentials behind their names to you know, make an impact or not. And
Have you gotten any like actual like, this is what I think is wrong with what you're saying scientifically, or just complaints?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people, but I don't think they understand like where I'm coming from with a lot of this. I know I posted my book, for instance, on a Facebook page the other day, just to say, hey, it's out. This is out here. You guys can check it out if you want to. And of course, that brings up a lot of, like, oh, we already know that's wind water from a lot of. But it's like, if you really look into it, guys, it's really not, and so there's a lot of just immediate pushback from people, and then it's their, the people that, the bandwagon people that jump on with that, even though they didn't look into it at all. They just go off the same crap that they've been spouting for years. Yeah, I don't know. I think we're getting close, but we're not there yet.
I guess that's kind of how science goes anyway. You need pushback, and takes a little bit of time and that kind of thing. I just appreciate people like you who not, without institutional backing, spent their own time and money and effort to put something out there. You laugh. You laugh. Why do you laugh?
I laugh because I had a guy. I was just thinking about this interaction I had earlier on that Facebook group where a guy literally called me Ken Ham. Who's the guy who built like the Ark in was it in Arkansas or something like that? And I was like, you know nothing about me, dude. You just he automatically assumed that I was talking about the Young Dryas impact and that I was like catastrophism, beating the Bible. And I'm like, you know nothing about what I'm doing. So I thought it was funny, and when you mentioned that, it made me chuckle. So.
Well, it sounds like you don't have a huge issue with putting yourself out there. I mean, you just want the information to get out there. We're gonna plug it on the show as much as we can, because we just want the answer, right, Mike, to what's going on in the universe, right? What's wrong with that? I want all the evidence.
Absolutely, open-minded curiosity, willing to weigh all the data, listen to all the evidence, and have an open discussion about it. So,
Yeah, and I'm willing to talk to anybody about it. That's I've turned down like debate style stuff in the past with people that really don't know what they're talking about. But like, I'm willing to sit down and talk with anybody about this. And that's one of the things, like the conversation with the Common Research Group members. It's that was my original like audience. I was trying to get their attention, and now I got them. And then they won't read my paper. They won't read, I'm sure they won't read my book. So it's like, well, then where are we going to go from here, fellas? Because we just want answers. We want to figure this out. So
Well, you guys heard it. We'll talk to you about it. If you want to talk to him about it, he's where to find him, right? And so where can everyone actually find you, right? You got your Dabbler's Den YouTube channel. What else?
Yeah, I need to get back on that. Hopefully things will calm down a little bit. I kind of feel like writing the book was like moving on to another chapter, and like literally, I guess. And
and figuratively, both.
Yeah, but I kind of like my whole Dabbler's Den persona is to be a dabbler, be somebody who is constantly doing new things. That's actually why I started the YouTube channel to begin with, was to kind of like, show my daughter, like, these are the things that I've done in the past, and these are the things that we're doing now. And it's always going to be something different. I don't like to go back and do the same thing again. Let's do something new. Let's do something different. And that's being what a dabbler is not being afraid to try new things. That's actually why I'm really looking forward to talking with you guys. And Josh, I don't know when this is going out, but I don't know if it's going to be before or after we have a conversation with Josh.
I think after,
yeah. He has a really cool story, and he's one of those guys that he just did it, man. He just said, we had a conversation at the Cosmic Summit, and he literally said he went home and he just got started, and I love that. I love that about Josh, man. So that's kind of the whole reason why I started the Dabbler's Den, was so that more people would just get out there and do something. If you go back and watch the first couple of episodes, like that's literally my tagline on the end of the episode: just get out there and go, just do something. It doesn't matter what it is, just get started. And that's kind of where I've been at now. That's the process of writing this paper. I had never written a paper before. It was a complete learning process, right? And I did it. I'm like, yay, I did it. And now I don't want to do that again.
So, yeah, you dabbled. I think you more than dabbled, though.
Well, and then, like I said, so the next dabble was to let's write a book, and so I hadn't done that before, and I've done that one now too. So I don't know where the next dabble is going to take me. I'm the Carolina Bays. I've mentioned this in the past. I'm ready for someone to take it over, preferably somebody with some backgrounds and some pull and some influence, and they can continue to move this forward. But at the same time, I'm having fun, finding new dabbles within the Carolina Bay field. So I don't know where it's going to go next, but that's what makes it fun and why we're going to keep doing it. So
and we're along with you for the ride. We're going to the next place with you. We're all going there together. So that's why this is fun.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I'm excited to see what the next dabble is, Chris, and we look forward to our live stream. I think is this weekend, isn't it, Brittany?
Is it
next weekend?
No,
a couple
this
weekends.
Yeah, maybe next weekend.
In a couple weeks. Brittany's got it on the calendar. We know when it is. So we're looking forward to that. A little reunion with Josh the Ancient and a little Cosmic Summit reunion.
Look forward.
I got something fun planned for that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining the Multiverse again, Mr. Chris Cottrell, the expert on the Carolina Bays. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Great to see you.
Yep, you too.
Hang tight.
Subscribe to Mike and Dave's Multiverse on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble today.